She cried in court, emotional, as she learned she could spend the rest of her life behind bars. 20-year-old Maya Hernandez is now officially facing murder charges after her 1-year-old baby died in a hot car. But police say this wasn't a tragic mistake. According to investigators, Hernandez left her children inside the vehicle for hours while she was getting lip filler. She told officers she thought they'd be okay because the air conditioning was on. But police say the car eventually shut off and her baby overheated and died. This week, Hernandez appeared in court to hear the charges that could put her away for life. I'm Kennedi Walker, and you're watching Law and Crime. Dressed in a prison jumpsuit, a California mother broke down in court, hysterical as she learned she's now facing murder charges. Police say 20-year-old Maya Hernandez left her 2 young sons in a hot car for more than 2 hours while she was inside getting lip injections. 1-year-old Amillio did not survive, his body temperature reaching 107 degrees, according to court documents. It happened on one of the hottest days of the year, 101 degrees in Bakersfield, California. Police say Hernandez had driven more than an hour from her hometown of Visalia to get the cosmetic procedure. With her were her 2 sons, ages 2 and 1 years old. Documents obtained by Law and Crime reveal that while she was inside the med spa, the boys were strapped into their car seats alone. She told investigators she left the car running, set the AC to 60 degrees, and left the doors unlocked. She said she gave them candy, milk, crackers, and a phone to watch. But detectives say her 2022 Toyota Corolla has a feature that automatically shuts off after an hour if no brake or pedal is pressed, something Hernandez apparently did not realize. When she returned to the car, she told police one child was foaming at the mouth and shaking. Both boys were rushed to the hospital. The 2-year-old survived, but baby Amillio died. At her preliminary hearing, 5 witnesses, including officers and detectives, testified. Detectives say Hernandez allegedly admitted in 2 separate interviews that it was irresponsible to leave her children in the car. They also revealed that Hernandez asked a nurse at the med spa if the kids could come inside. She was told yes, that they could wait in the lobby, but she left them in the car instead. Maya Hernandez is now charged with murder, involuntary manslaughter, and 2 counts of child cruelty. And here to break down this story with me is civil rights trial attorney Jim DeSimone. Jim, thank you so much for coming on today.
My pleasure.
So let's just jump right in. The child's mother, Maya Hernandez, has officially been charged with murder. What are your thoughts? And do you think the charges fit the crime?
Well, under California law, if someone has a conscious disregard for human life, it can be the equivalent of malice aforethought for second-degree murder. So while this in no way seems to be premeditated, that you have to believe the mom, she's not intentionally trying to kill or injure her children. The admissions she made when interviewed did allow the judge in this case to say, yes, I'm going to hold her over for murder with $1 million bond because she spoke to the police and made some admissions in those interviews.
How many years is she facing if she's found guilty?
Well, if it's murder, it would be 15 years to life. So it could be a life sentence. I mean, the more likely sentence here would be involuntary manslaughter, which carries with it something along the lines of 5 or 6 years. You could add in perhaps the child cruelty charges, which she's also being charged with here for her neglect of her children. Whether or not those terms would run consecutively or simultaneously depends on another number of factors. But the fact that you have the greater charges here in murder does expose her to the possibility of, a lifetime of jail for this. And of course, she does have a second child that's living, then would be without a mom.
Now, at first, she was charged with manslaughter, and then the charges got upgraded to murder. Why does this happen? Why do you think this happened? And does this happen often?
Well, the attorneys who practice criminal defense, they say, you never want to sit down and speak to the police. It's never going to help you. Some of my colleagues go on social media and say, shut the F up. And that's, good advice. I mean, while it's hard to have empathy with Miss Hernandez, I mean, she's going for a lip filler injection at a medical spa and leaves her kid in the car. The extenuating circumstances that she explained was, hey, I left it with the air conditioning on. So, but she was there for 2 hours. So, word to the warning for people who ever think that leaving your kid in a car with the air conditioner running is safe. Those cars shut off after a certain period of time. This model did, and that's why you have one children dead. But she also made critical admissions when she was questioned, and she nodded her head yes that she knew her actions were irresponsible. She basically said she had heard ads about the dangers of leaving children unattended in a car. She knew what could happen, that a child, the worst case scenario, that a child could die if they were left alone in a car. And the appointment took 15 minutes. She was in there for 2 hours. Why can't she come back and check on her kids in the car? Also, the nurse at the spa said she was welcome to bring her kids in. She could have been with her kids in the waiting room for all that time, go in for 15 minutes. You know, you have a 1 and a 2 year old. Yeah, pretty young to be left alone. But I mean, just to be left alone in a car seems reprehensible at that age. There's other dangers that could happen, which we could speak about. But really, you have a situation here where her speaking to the police showed that she did have the knowledge that this could be harmful to her children, which allowed the judge to increase the charges to murder in a preliminary hearing after the testimony of police who questioned her.
Absolutely. And we'll get into the details in a moment. But I think one thing that stood out to me in this case, and I've covered like a lot of these unfortunate child death stories, is usually when you hear about it, you just hear about the parent leaving the children in the car, they go do whatever they're doing. You never really hear about a parent saying, well, I left the AC on. Still very irresponsible and still can be deadly. Clearly, that happened in this case. But it does add, in my opinion, another layer to it. So, this mother allegedly admitted to knowing the risk, like we said, but thought the AC would stay on. How much weight does that kind of explanation carry in court?
Well, yeah, I think it can. She does. She clearly spoke with these police investigators and detectives without having an attorney present. At some point, she's going to have to lawyer up with these charges. And 20 years old. I mean, I think her age plays into it as well. They said that she was out of it. I'd like to hear: was she on some medication or something that impacted her judgment that day? But generally, in cases like this, people don't come in and testify. They have the right to remain silent, the Fifth Amendment against incriminating themselves. So if there was a trial, would she testify on her behalf? But I think that her explanation that she left the air conditioner on, really had no intent to harm her children and didn't do it in conscious disregard of their health and safety, could result in a lesser charge of involuntary manslaughter or child cruelty instead of the charge of murder, which carries the much longer prison sentence.
Yeah, and her representation said that she's not a murderer, just negligent. I mean, I'm assuming you agree with that argument. Do you think that that argument would be successful?
I mean, clearly, she didn't intend, right, for her children to die. I mean, I take it that, despite this irresponsibility that's hard to understand as a parent at this point in my life as a grandparent, it's you care so much for your children. I could never imagine leaving my child in a car for that period of time, because she left the key in the car. She left the door unlocked. I mean, there's all types of other dangers which could happen to two young children left alone in an unlocked car. She's up in Porterville, not here in Los Angeles, where I'm speaking to you from. But still, I mean, there's dangers anywhere where if you're leaving children unattended for that period of time. So while there's some empathy for her explanations, I mean, this isn't like the case where you had a guy who going for a job interview and he leaves somewhat older children in the McDonald's playground parking lot, right? Or not parking lot, the playground where, you have McDonald's, and he's like, look, I'm going for a job. And somebody sees kids without a parent and calls the police, and he gets arrested for child endangerment. She's going to get a lip filler at a spa. This isn't like, something that's necessary. So I think that what she was doing that day, and the fact that she could have brought the kids in and also checked on the kids, also militates against her story, unfortunately for her.
Yeah, very true. I'm just wondering, on top of negligence, just what are the defense options? Because can they argue maybe she was overwhelmed, she was a single mother? We know that the child's father, according to reports, is in jail currently, so she didn't have a break. Maybe she didn't have a babysitter. But like how we said, regardless, this is not an easy case for her to win, given just all of the facts that we have. But do you think that her attorneys, do they negotiate or prepare for trial?
Well, I would imagine that if they could get a deal where she's looking at, a few years in jail or prison instead of those higher sentences, and the prosecutor was amenable to that, given, the lack of, really intent on her part to hurt her children, that it would be prudent for a deal, because jurors are can be very harsh on parents, especially mothers. In my experience, in different cases where we're civil rights lawyers and something happens to a child, they're quick to blame the parents, even if somebody else is the actual cause of that harm. So, I think there's a big risk for her going to trial under these circumstances, given that this was for a lip filler appointment. Certainly not, if this was something where she was, had to go in for testing because she thought she had cancer or something like that, then a lot more empathy, a lot more sympathy comes with that story. But when you have this type of cosmetic surgery that basically goes towards, vanity, I can't imagine that a lip filler injection is any medical necessity. That is something that's probably going to be not looked upon very favorably by a jury. So if I was her criminal defense attorney and I could get a deal where the time was limited, I would certainly encourage her to take it.
What would be the best deal in your opinion?
2 years. I don't see you have a.
But do we think that's possible? I mean, you have a DA that's pushing for murder charges here. I mean, that's pretty intense. Instead of manslaughter, I was thinking, if it was going to be 2 or 3 years, they would have kept the manslaughter charge. Do you think that they're trying to make an example out of her?
Well, the prosecutors can go very hard at the beginning of the case when, I think a lot of it depends on, she has been cooperative interviews with probation, and to see, she is employed as a medical assistant. Her significant other maybe in jail, but I didn't see anything about her having a prior criminal record. So that's something that's taken into consideration. And then you have the reality that, this poor 2 year old who is going to be, at this point, obviously has no idea what's going on, but at some point is going to learn what happened to his brother. But, what is the good if he is without a mom or a dad at this point in time? So, maybe down the line, the actual prosecutor that's going to prosecute the case may have a different view. But you're absolutely right. I mean, they're going for it, in terms of the murder charge. And once again, she really opened herself up to it by agreeing to 2 interviews. I mean, I'm sure she was, of course, I mean, she lost her child. You look at these cases in comparison where, unfortunately, in our present political situation, where women have miscarriages and then get arrested and have lost, what they hope to be their baby, and they've had a miscarriage, and then in some jurisdictions end up arrested for that. I mean, that seems like a real tragedy in these situations. This is a different situation. She made an intentional decision to keep her kids in the car for 2 hours when there was a viable alternative.
Let's just dive a little more into that, because that is where I was like, oh man, like I don't see what could her reason possibly have been. The fact that police, according to documents, they have the messages where her she asked, hey, can I bring my kids in? They said yes, and she still decided to leave them in the car. I mean, how is that going to play out in court?
I don't see it playing out as well, because you had a great alternative, to have your kids in a safe environment, at a spa. Sure, there's an attendant there that when she has this 15-minute procedure, you know, most people love babies, right? They're going to take care. They're not going to be at risk while they're in the spa, as opposed to being in an unlocked car out in a parking lot where a number of different things can happen. So that really, I think, and once again, that's something where she's admitting that she received that message in that interview, so she can't back from it and say, oh, I thought I wasn't able to do it, I didn't get that message. She's already on tape admitting all that. So Man, if even a longer deal, you said best case scenario 2 years, even a longer deal, something in the 3 to 5 year range might be best for her, rather than, especially if they're pushing for murder, which again at 15 years to life is a long time.
Right. And she does have another child, like how we mentioned, because two kids were in the car. The youngest one, the 1 year old, he did die. Her 2 year old, he is still alive. But in cases like this where a child dies and there's no history of abuse, how do prosecutors prove criminal recklessness versus just a lapse in judgment?
Well, again, with her admissions, I'm sure, she was read her rights. She's in custody. This isn't a spontaneous admission at the scene where she's not, in custody, but there's no Miranda rights read. So that testimony is going to be admissible. I think there's a series of admissions that she made, as I said, which can show that there was a conscious disregard of the children's safety. So they have the evidence in her prior statements, and when you look even at the child cruelty, well, usually in child cruelty you're looking at something that involves physical punishment of the child. It also can be in a situation where a parent places a child in a situation where his or her health is endangered. Well, that's what we have here, and that can carry up to 6 years. Again, the defense is that the injury was truly accidental and not the result of any willful or intentional harm. And if that can be convincingly explained to a jury, perhaps there's a chance that there's only the lesser charges. But I don't see a jury. When you've got a dead body and you've got someone who's responsible for that, especially a child here, I don't think that there's much chance that a jury would actually let her off scot-free, given the totality of the conduct here.
And let's just talk more about the jury. In child death cases, we know that emotions run extremely high. I mean, what will the jurors see and how will they be instructed to handle this case?
Well, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence here in terms of the testimony of the individuals in the spa who have said that she seemed really out of it. That's why I wonder if there's some medication. I mean, hopefully it would be something that, for her sake, that would be prescribed medication. I didn't read anything where they did a drug test and she was under the influence of any drugs or anything like that. But the jury will be taken through the series of decisions that she made in making this appointment when she has two children. She also had family members that could have watched those children. She said she didn't want to inconvenience them. I mean, you don't want to inconvenience someone, but you're going to expose your child to a risk. I mean, a series of bad decisions. So the jury's going to be taking through all that evidence of the circumstances surrounding this. And then they're going to be instructed that if she acted in conscious disregard of of their health and safety, and again, it's got to be conscious, that they can fine for the murder charge. So the elements of the crime are there, unfortunately, for Miss Hernandez. And it also seems like the evidence surrounding it, even if she ultimately doesn't testify, could be sufficient, where it's very plausible that a jury could find her guilty of murder. Counterbalancing that is just, when we think of murder, we think of something premeditated, where someone is going out and it makes a decision that they want to kill someone, and that's where we think of murder versus manslaughter. So if you've got that kind of predisposition, maybe the jury finds for the lesser charge, because it really is kind of the almost the same, where you can have the involuntary manslaughter, where it's basically the unintentional killing of a person caused by criminal negligence or recklessness without the intent to kill. So certainly, was this negligent? It sure seems like it, that she'll be found guilty of at least that.
If she were to walk free or be released after serving, an amount of time, what's the chances that she would be able to have custody of her oldest child again after this accident?
Well, I think that if she shows a strong conduct in prison in terms of rehabilitation, is involved in activities, and I'm sure there's going to be, you know, parenting classes and that. I mean, not that our prison system is really the best for true rehabilitation, but setting that aside, there are opportunities for women in prison to go through with a good record state court. So you're really looking at serving half the time of what the sentence is. And if she has some strong family support, I would think that that is, as long as it doesn't seem like she's abusing drugs, going back to criminal activity, that she would be able to get her child back. And that depends on what happens and how long she's gone and what that child's circumstances are otherwise. Are there other family members that will step up and take care of the child? You hope so for the 2-year-old's sake.
Yeah, I was just about to ask. Dad's in jail now. Mom is in jail facing these murder charges for the younger boy. What happens to that 2-year-old?
Well, the 2-year-old's going to go through, the Department of Social Services here, and you basically are going to have a caseworker who's going to make a decision, and that's why it's so important if there are family members that can, at least allow for some, continuity in this child's care. And they will take into consideration if there's family members that can step forward and are willing to take care of the child, and that would be the preference, as opposed to someone who is who doesn't know the child. But yeah, so here's a child that needs to be taken care of and has gone through his own trauma. He was in that car too. I mean, he's 2 years old, but he felt it, and he also has now for a year had a brother that he no longer has. So, it's hard to fully have an understanding of what a 2-year-old can comprehend, but that 2-year-old's been through a trauma and is going to need some good support and counseling as he gets older.
Absolutely. And I just want to make it clear. I know the dad, according to reports of the 1-year-old, is in jail. We aren't sure if both boys had the same father. If so, then my statement would have been correct about him being in jail. But hope maybe, you never know. So this is a story that we will be following closely. Jim, thank you so much for coming on today.
You're welcome. I'm glad that we had this opportunity.
Maya Hernandez is scheduled to be back in court on July 24th. For Law and Crime, I'm Kennedi Walker.